Knotty Pine. It's been years since the last time I visited. My uncle's guitar reclines in his empty chair, waiting in vain for his fingers to pick out notes that for years rang off the Knotty Pine walls before becoming muffled by soft green carpet, but his gnarled knuckles gave up years ago. This was his favorite room in the house, built to look exactly like the cabin up north where he spent his childhood summers. After he was left alone, he rarely used the rest of the house. The room is cleaner now, straightened up to allow strangers to roam through while thinking about mortgages and updates. It's been years since I last visited, and the room looks the same except for a deeper, more enduring silence. This is also the first time I've ever read these out loud. This one's called Pelicans, and my first thought when I saw the photo was, I love this photo, but what the heck am I going to write about? So I kind of just made it up. This is kind of from the point of view of a fish. It's called Pelicans. The top of my world shimmers with danger as three black shadows cross the blue-gray surface of all that I know. We are warned about the long beaks, the way they scoop our brothers and sisters from our ranks. The elders call them death from above. Yet still, I have the desire, late in the day, to start from the bottom silt, swim upwards with all my might, and break through the plain into the vast unknowing, see for myself all that the Great One has created and placed like a cruel joke just outside of my reach. If you look at this photo, I just noticed after I'd written the poem that that's the Fuel Cafe where I wrote these poems. Meta. This is called Winter Scene, River West. Just before midnight on a Thursday, and Fratney Street is nearly silent. Two sounds compete for the night: the crunch of boots on dirty snow from a woman walking away from you, and the insistent hum of a street lamp on the far corner. The snowplows have completed their appointed rounds. The pavement has been well seasoned. You stand there with your back against a telephone pole and watch her shrink into the distant past until she becomes just another blessed stranger, no longer in your line of sight. And you shiver. The temperature is beginning to drop names. The street lamp is humming a Dylan tune, and a red light in the second floor window above an all-night laundromat across the street goes out, fading away to a colder shade of black. Berries. Both the title and a fact. Berries. Hiking along a railroad track turned bike trail, we found an explosion of berries along a field just beginning to find its own way back to life. They were red, but neither of us cared enough to find a metaphor, so just red they remained. You told me how some red berries in this area are poisonous to certain small mammals, yet are a delicacy to many birds. Try one, you said, almost smiling. Our dog ran over to sniff them as if his hunger could ever be sated by crimson little orbs hanging from thin stems. You called him back, afraid he may eat that which later will tear at his insides, momentary pleasure replaced by intestinal regret. But he gulped a mouthful before returning to us on the trail, and all that night you watched him, waiting to see if he would be undone by his hunger or if he was tested out of toxicity for us, trying out something new before we do it, like just last week when he began sleeping on the living room couch instead of our bed. And I'm going to read one last one of... This is pretty new, like Wednesday, I believe. And I'm writing a poem every day this month for National Poetry Month, and I get a prompt mailed to me in the morning. And I write a poem, and the prompt for this one was, "All I kept hearing." So somewhere in the poem I had to throw "all I kept hearing." So this is not a very happy poem, but it's called Elegy with Great Black Wings. There was a girl that I loved once and who maybe once loved me in return, whose death came to me in a single paragraph in the Sunday Tribune while I was eating my breakfast, a decade after the last time we kissed each other goodbye. By then, she had moved out west and I had married someone else, and she had returned to live in the Midwest, and I had begun my path leading towards the ensuing divorce. We never reunited or spoke, as there didn't seem to be a need. But at one time, I thought she would be the one with whom I woke up next to on gray winter mornings, the falling snow mixing with the remaining stars, a glittering of the northern sky that would seem as unreal as my then expectations. And now the thought, as unrealistic as most of my thoughts back then, that had we ended up together, had we tried to love one another even in the face of facts pointing us away from each other, that perhaps she would not have been living alone in that city, and those 3 men who followed her home that night would not have done to her those things they did to her, before one of them crushed her larynx in his sweaty hands, and they left with $27 from her wallet, and a week later did the same to that teacher. So I drove to the adjoining state to attend her memorial service, not knowing if I'd be known there by anyone, or if the sight of her closed casket would set off a rush of regret or love or fear or indifference in the face of grief. And then the sight of her stooped and broken parents, aged beyond my memories of them, and a stunned boyfriend who could not bear to even enter the room, and bar friends with boozy breath and red-rimmed eyes telling stories to brace against their own fear, sent me running to my car, trying to remember the sound of her voice. But all I kept hearing on the way back to Wisconsin was the sound of angels, their great black wings vibrating at a frequency just below the surface of all other sound, their silver voices rising in what she and I would have called song, but what is to them merely their native tongue, mixed with the sound of someone weeping. Thank you.